Hello everyone. Today we'll be going over Chapter 4 of the AWD1000 Web Technologies course. We will be going over some slides and also spending a considerable amount of time in the Visual Source Code Editor as well. Okay. So to get started here on the slides, we're going to look at the three ways to provide styles within an HTML document. And the first one is using an external style sheet and using the link tag, which is in the HTML document, to bring in that file, right? The second is embedding those styles in the head section using the style tag, like this, right? And the third way is to provide those styles inline, right, in an HTML tag, okay? Now there's a lot of very good reasons to use the external style sheet as opposed to the other two options. And probably one of the biggest reasons is in software development, there's this idea of separation of concerns. And it's an architectural kind of design pattern where you want to keep things separate based on layers, based on objectives, and so forth. And with an HTML document, that's a markup language, right? HTML is a markup language, and it defines the structure and content of the web page. Whereas the cascading style sheets is about formatting that content, right? It's more about formatting and presentation. So it's always a good idea to have that separated, okay? And there are other reasons as well, such as, it's a good idea, especially, we're just doing some individual pages here and there, and as time goes on, we're going to be doing more complex things, right? But and when you start doing more complex things, it's a lot, it's much more efficient to be sharing some of those styles across multiple pages. And quality, well-built websites do just that, right? They're going to define some styles, and those styles are going to be used consistently through the pages, right? And so if you embed a bunch of stuff in a page, then you're kind of defeating the purpose of that, all right? So the sequence in which styles are provided is first it's the external style sheet, right? So if you have, let's just say you have a font size of eight points, right? You have a font size of 8 points in your style sheet, and then also have you also have for that element you also defined in your embedded styles at the top of your document, right, in the head sections. Let's say you also defined a font size and you made it 12 points, right? And then in the in the within the tag itself, you have an inline style for making it 16 points. So first, what will happen is the external style sheet will get rendered, and it will use that 8 point, right? Then your embedded styles will overwrite that one, and then your inline styles will overwrite that one. Okay, hope that makes sense. So HTML can be selected in three different ways: by your element type, ID, or class, right? So your element type is, basically your selectors, your different tags, H1, your P tag, image tag, footer, and various other tags as well, right? Now your ID is just one specific tag, one specific identification that you put on one specific tag, right? In this case, you have an ID of copyright. Okay? You have an ID of copyright. And so it's really important that you only have a unique copyright on one element, right? In this case, this P tag. Okay? And the other way is through a class, right? And right here's an example of a class. And as you can see, class has a blue and a right. And actually what this is this is actually two different styles that are defined within the style sheet. And we will look at that later. And also I want to point out why creating a style called blue or right is usually a bad idea. And when we get into the editor, I'll explain that more in detail. Okay. And then just quickly here, so whenever you refer to a HTML element in the style sheet, you're just using the name like H1 or P, right? Body, whatever, right? When you refer to an ID, you use a pound sign within the style sheet. And for a class, it's going to be a dot or a period, right? And we will look at that here in a little bit. All right. So at the top of your HTML file, you can define what's called a universal selector. And a universal selector starts with an asterisk, and that's going to, whatever you define within your curly braces is going to apply to the whole page. Okay. Now here are some examples like we were just discussing. Elements by type, and these are by HTML tag, main H1P, right? Here's one for an ID, always starts with the pound hash or pound, right? Depends on what you call that. A lot of people call that a hash, right? Hash or a pound. And then you have your element by class, which starts with a period or a dot, right? Now in browsers, in the past, browsers used to implement things differently. And so in the past, it was very important to have what's called a normalized CSS style sheet. And what that did was kind of if you applied that style sheet to a page in one browser and then you applied and then brought that up in a different browser, if you had that style sheet for that web page in there, also in that other browser, it normalized it. It made it similar, so you were kind of starting at ground one, because browsers put a little bit of styling in by default, and it's a way just to bring it back to a kind of a ground foundation without any real styling. Okay, so that you can build upon that, right? So nowadays the web browsers are a lot more compliant, and they've done a lot better job of following standards as opposed to what they did a lot years ago. So there's a lot less need for it, but it's important for you to understand that about that a little bit, and understand that that can be an option, and you may run across seeing that in a job somewhere that where they have some normalized CSS file in there, or there might be a new project and there's some specific reason that you want to do that as well, right? So just need to point that out, and we'll take a look at doing that here in the editor in a minute. Actually, I think we'll go ahead and come back to the colors. I think we'll go ahead and go into the editor here for a little bit, and then we'll come back and review some of these slides on colors. Okay. So here in the editor, you see our link to our style sheet, and this is the style sheet for this page. And one way to view that style sheet from within the editor, you can hit, I already have it open here, but if you hit your control key at the bottom, and then hold that down and click this, it'll go to the style sheet. Okay. Now, what I've seen throughout my career a lot, places do things differently, obviously, and some things better than others. But a lot of times you have what's kind of like called like a main CSS page. I don't have one in here, but usually have like a main CSS page, and that's going to be just your basic type of styles that's been defined for the whole website. And then you might have a specific one for just your page or group of pages, especially if you're talking about a very large application or website, and you might have some specific things you're doing on a page or a group of pages, and you define that in a different style sheet than your main one. Okay. Now I want to go over this normalized CSS. So first we want to go ahead and download that. And there's a link. There's a link in the book. Also, I have a link down here at the bottom of my page. If I click on this link, it'll open up in a new browser. And this is the basically the style sheet, the normalized style sheet. And I can save that to my computer by clicking the three dots up here, going down to Save and Share, and Save Page As. Navigate to your directory structure where you want to save it. For me, I've got my demonstration and styles, and under here, I already have it, but I'll go ahead and save it again. And save, yes, place. And now it's within my directory structure, and I can refer to the style sheet from there, right? So here's our page. So first thing I want to go ahead and do here is highlight this and hit Control M and then Control / to comment out this line. Okay, and I want to hit Control S to save this. And as you see on the right hand side there, the web page, you'll see how all the styles that were applied from the Chapter 4 styles that we had, that I created, will not be applied to that page anymore, right? Control S. Let's get it. There we go. So now you can see the styles are not applied anymore, except this one down here. And this is one of the inline ones. And just real quick, I don't want to change gears too much, but since this is showing, I wanted just to point out something. So down here, as you can see, the Visual Source Code Editor actually complains about inline styles is not allowed, even though, as you can see on the right-hand side here, it did turn that to red. So it actually did work, but the editor is actually telling you you shouldn't be doing this, right? So just kind of wanted to point that out. So now we want to go ahead and let's look at the developer tools, because even though we don't have styles applied here, you see there's a little bit of spacing here, right? There's a margin. So just to let you know that all the browsers add some default styles to your web page, just by default, right? And so if I go to More Tools, Developer Tools, as you can see, there's a list of styles here, right? It's margins all the way around here. They define the display as block. They set a height and a width, and they have margins, right? Bottom, left, right, top. So these are just default margins that Chrome uses, okay? And they add this to all web pages, okay? So that's one thing this whole normalize style sheet will do. It will remove those extra styles, those from your page. Okay. So as you can see on the right, we still have the margin around there. And so if I go here and uncomment this out and do that by, once again, hitting the control key and M, then the control key and /, now we have that style sheet uncommented out. So if you look over here on the right, because I'm getting ready to save this, I want you to look and be so that you can see how this will shift, right? I'm going to hit the control S. When I hit that, it will save it, and you will see how that changes. Oop, I had the wrong thing in focus. I had the page in focus, not the other. So I'm going to hit Control S, and you're going to see the web page on the right-hand side. You're going to see it adjust and move all the way to the left. So now it removed that margin. So that normalized CSS actually, just gets your web page to like to a base kind of, so to speak, and then you can build upon that, right? Like I said earlier, in modern browsers, it's probably not as important, but there might be some instances that you want to do that, and you may work somewhere where you see that they're doing some normalization of CSS before they apply their styles, right? So just wanted to point that out to you. Okay, let's go back to the slides and talk about color a little bit. So there's 3 different ways to specify colors. Actually, there's more than 3, but that's what the book says here. But we'll discuss the other ways as well. 3 ways to specify color. You can use a color name, like we did what we just did when we were making a change to that copyright. And then also you can use RGB, the red, green, blue. And then you can also use an RGB value that uses the hexadecimal numbers. Okay. And we're going to go, when we get back into the editor, we're going to talk about that a little more in detail. Okay. So here you've got a background color, and this is hexadecimal. And like I said, we're going to talk about that a little bit more here in a minute. But this can also be coded shorthand FFC, and the reason for that is if you take each 2 of these together, and if these 2 are the same, you can just use 1F. If 2 of these are the same, you can use 1F. And 2 of these are the same, you can use 1C, right? So you can write it like this instead, okay? And then here it's just kind of actually showing the opposite, that if you got this code at 00F, that's the same as this, right? Always remember that, you have to think about accessibility, and dark text on a light background is easier to read. So let's just go back to the editor here. I wanted to talk a little bit about hex codes and give you a little bit of background there. So there are named colors, and there's 16 basic named colors, and then there's also some extended colors, and I think the total's about 148 or something like that now. So as far as colors that you can just put the name in, there's about 148 of them, right? Now a hex color uses hexadecimal to represent colors using the RGB. It uses the RGB, which is the red, green, blue. The first 2 is red, next 2 are green, and the last 2 are blue, right? You use hex numbers to represent those. And then also you have what's called the RGB color. And these are decimal numbers here instead of hex numbers. So anywhere between 0 and 255. Okay. And then we also have HSL, and we'll go ahead and talk about that here in a little bit as well. It's a little different. So a quick, so as far as here's a good site for getting colors, looking at different options, and you can also see, you know, the name color plus the hex and or the decimal, right? So as you can see, like silver here, here's the hex that you would use for silver, and then all you would do is replace your color here with that, and it would be that, right? The other is the RGB, and if you use the decimal, you replace what's in the parentheses with that. That will work for that one, right? Now I know that these. I don't want this to confuse you with these the names here, name color. This is just name that we just made up. This is for demonstration purposes, right? This is a CSS. You know, you could call most likely, and it's probably best to you're going to stick with. You know, you might use some name colors and then also use either hex color or RGB or HSL, but you're not going to be using all of these in one document, right? There's really no reason for that. You know, you may just have name colors. You might even not use name colors at all, or just name colors, right? And you know, let's just look at an example. You know, just to get that out of the way. You know, you may use a couple name colors and then have hex colors for everything else, and that's it, right? So you don't necessarily use all these different colors. These are just what options are available, okay? Now, I did want to go through the concept of hexadecimal. What's a hexadecimal? And we're going to even back up from that a little bit, okay? So when a computer executes code, okay, or you know just provides any kind of basic functionality, you know, when you're sending text messages and you're doing different things on your phone, right? That device, that hardware device, is actually at the very lowest level is using binary, okay? And I'm going to show you a little bit what binary. I don't know if you've ever heard of the concept when we talk about computers, ones and zeros, right? So the smallest unit of data a computer can process and store is a bit, right? And a bit is either on or off, right? It's either a 1 for on or it's a 0 for off, okay? Now, you know, when we write like code, like HTML code and that, CSS, and any programming language, right? We kind of like think, well, the computer understands all that. It really doesn't understand all that. It's really a different at what layer you're at, and at the very lowest level, right? At the very lowest level, computers use ones and zeros, right? It's all binary. That's at the very basic lowest level. Now, what we're doing is like HTML, which is a markup language. We'll be doing CSS, JavaScript, and basically any other programming language are considered higher level languages. There's some other languages that are considered less than higher level, you know, like assembler is considered a lower level programming language. But, you know, a lot of what most people use nowadays are considered higher level programming languages, right? So for a computer to be able to execute that, it all has to be converted to, you know, there's multiple layers for that to get converted. It does it very quickly though, but it has to all be converted down to ones and zeros, right? It's either on or off, right? So one thing, you know, we're used to a basic decimal numbering system, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? And this is base 10, right? Actually, you got to count one as a zero as a digit. You know, it's zero is the first digit all the way through 9, which is actually the 10th digit when you count zero, right? So this is base 10, right? Well, binary is base 2. Okay, binary is a little different. And you can convert, you can line up these little bits and you can convert that into a decimal. And we're just going to, please bear with me, we won't spend too much time on here, but just a little bit. So you can group them together. And so let's see, let's use this as, let's do this. So we got 4 of them here. So in binary, this is the ones place, this is the twos place, this is the fours place, and this is the eighths place, right? So here we've got 1, so all of these are on. So basically what this is you're adding 8 plus 4 plus 2 plus 1, right? And so if we convert this from binary to decimal, the answer is going to be 15. 8 plus 4 is 12, plus 2 is 14, plus 1 is 15, okay? And that's binary, right? And like I said, this is the basic low level. Obviously, you're lots and ones. So lots of ones and zeros. You know, just to represent the number 15, right? So, you know, and this is just the beginning of that. You know, it's very extensive, right? And you know, a lot of times, you know, you do this too. So like this is another way. So this represents a different number, right? So this is the ones place, there's nothing there, so that's off. This is the twos place, that's on. So you've got a 2 now. This is the fours place, that's off. You still got your 2 here though. And this is the eights place, and this is on, right? So you got 8 plus 2 is 10. When you hit convert, there's your 10, right? Now back to what hexadecimal is. Hexadecimal is a human-friendly representation of binary values. So these were the binary values, right? That we were looking at. Hexadecimal is a more human-friendly, easier way to represent those binary values. Okay. Now, like we were saying, you know, we're used to the decimal system, right? Which is base 10. So hexadecimal is not base 10. Hexadecimal is base 16. So what happens with that is this is your 10th number in a decimal system, you know, base 10, right? And so the next one for hexadecimal, because you've got to go up to 16 here, you don't just put the number 10, 11, 12. What you put here is A, B, D, E, E and F, right? Oh, what happened there? What happened to my stuff? Oh, it's because it's binary. It didn't like me doing that. Let's see. I thought it would let me. Oh, it won't let me put letters in. I guess maybe if I change this to hexadecimal there. Let's do that. So it'll be okay with all of these now. Yeah, I'm just kind of using this calculator kind of as a demonstration instead of jumping to a different document and so forth. So, but like I said, here's your 0 through 9, right? And then with hexadecimal, you've got A, B, C, D, E, and F. Okay? And that's your 16th one, right? So this is 16, the first 16 in a hexadecimal, right? So what we do here, let's go ahead and switch this from decimal to hexadecimal. And so like the number 9, like we said, we're going to convert that. Or number 8, I'm sorry, 8, we're going to convert that to an 8. Same with 9, gets converted to a 9. But then when we go to 10, that's where this is going to get converted to an A, right? 11, convert it to a B, all the way up until 15, which is an F. So that's where you start seeing, like if you look over here at the hexadecimals on the left-hand side, you know, here's a couple Fs, right? So that's kind of maybe helps a little understand that this is basically a hexadecimal representation, right? And by using this hexadecimal representation, you are creating a color, right? Shouldn't say creating, you're referring to a color, okay? I hope that didn't confuse too many people there. So back to our code over here. So if we put all zeros here, right? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All zeros are going to be black, right? All F's is going to be white. And then everything's in between, right? So here's red, FF 00, 0. Now you can use, as far as letters in a hexadecimal here, you can use uppercase or lowercase. I think that just the important thing is just make sure, probably best just to be consistent, you know, don't be mixing and matching them, you know. You just kind of, if you're going to use all lowercase, use lowercase. You use uppercase, use all uppercase, okay? So we've already kind of went through the hexadecimals a little bit there. In the red, green, blue here, this doesn't use hexadecimals, but this is going to use your, you know, this is going to use regular decimal, right? So if we want to do gray here, right, I'm just going to copy that. And I'm going to drop that right in here, okay? Could have just typed that faster. So there's our gray, right? I'm going to put that back to what that was, though. I don't know what I had there, too. Okay. Now another part of our RGB, actually this will take another parameter after that, okay? So let's just go do that. Let's just do it right here. So let's see here. We've got this as that. I'd rather do this one in something like red or something. So let's save that. And then we're going to put in another number here. And what this is going to be is called opacity, right? And opacity is the condition of lacking transparency or translucence, right? It's kind of the idea of thinner paints when you got, you know, need more black so you can increase the opacity. I don't know if that makes sense, but, you know, it's opacity is the lack of transparency, okay? And what we can do is, this is called RGB, and then it's an A because it's called the alpha channel. The alpha channel is this extra parameter you put in here. And you can put in like 0.5 is going to be 50%, okay? Now, if you look over here, we're on the right-hand side, we've got that RGB values. If I save that, I think that's the one, isn't it? Yeah, and if I save that one, It didn't work. Oh, so what you have to do on this, you have to change this to RGBA, and then you have that, and then if you save that, another option with RGB here is what's called RGBA, okay? And what that is, it's adds another parameter. First you need to change this to RGBA, right? And then you add this extra parameter, which is called the alpha channel, okay? And this is going to be really, between 0 and 1.0, right? 1.0 is going to be 100%. So like if you put 0.5, this is going to be 50%. And as you kind of can see here, you see how that kind of changed that color there a little bit, right? And that changes the opacity, right? So if you put just the number 0 in here, 0.0, that's going to change it to fully transparent, right? You can't see it at all on the page now by putting this at 0.0, right? Now, if you put this at 1.0, which is 100%, okay? I'll hit Control S on that. And if you look over there on the right-hand side, it's going to look just like the red here, right? But if you put it at 0.5, right? This is halfway in between, right? Oh, I did that wrong, sorry. So you can see it's lighter colored, right? It's in between, when you've got a 0.0, that's fully transparent, you can't see it. 1.0, 1.0, and that's fully oblique, right? And then in between, it's just going to change the transparency of that. So if you want that even a little lighter, let's try that. Change that to a 3. Hit save. See, keep going down, and it's going to get lighter and lighter, right? I'm going to put that 0.8. That's like 80%. That's considered 80%, right? It's getting pretty close. I can hardly tell the difference there, but. So that's just another option there with RGB, and that's called RGBA. You got to make sure you have an A in there, and you have to provide that what's called the alpha channel, and that's going to be that fourth parameter that you send that. Okay. Also, I'm going to discuss HSL a little bit, and HSL stands for hue, saturation, lightness, right? And it's just a different CSS color model that can be used, okay? I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but the hue represents the type of color, being like red, blue, or green, and there's kind of this angle thing with a color wheel. It's for example, 0% is red, 120% is green, and 240% is blue. Okay. And that's just the hue part of it. And then the S is for saturation. And that indicates the intensity of the color, ranging from 0% to 100%. 0% is a shade of gray, whereas 100% is the full color, right? And then there's lightness. And that specifies the brightness of the color, with 0 being black, and then 50% being normal, and then 100% being white. Okay. We have a lot of things in the chapter. I wasn't going to go over, spend too much more time on this because there's plenty of other things in this chapter. And did want to also point out that besides the HSL, there's the same thing with the SHLA where you can do the has the alpha channel like we already looked at for the RGA one, and you can do that as well. Okay. Did want to go ahead and talk about measurements a little bit. So regarding measurements here, so there's absolute, which are basically, like fixed amounts, right? Absolute, they don't change based on, something else on that page, right? Whatever you design, whatever you have them defined as is what they will be. And then you have what's, pixels, which are px, and there's also points, which are pts, right? What is that telling us? Yeah, okay. So PTs are points. So you can have 20 20 pixels. The difference between pixels and points, probably the important things, you kind of want to just, make sure you're consistent in what you're doing. But, pixels and points, PX for pixels, PT for points, are both units of measure for font size and websites, right? And other applications as well. One pixel is equal to 1/96th of an inch, while 1 point is equal to 1/72nd of an inch, right? And that means that 16 pixels are equal to 12 points. Okay. I don't want to spend diving into that too much more. But the fact is that it's absolute. So whatever what you put down there, that's what that element's going to be. Whatever you assign, for like here you got dot absolute and whatever class, whatever you apply that to, then it's going to be that amount, right? Now relative's a different thing. So relative, as you can see here, it says 1.5 EM. So it's going to be relative to. It's going to be relative to whatever you have defined. So here you've got defined 16 pixels, right? And that's for the whole body of this thing, right? And if you see here, we got 1.5, right? So what we do here, so right here you have the relative units. You can see how this is bigger, right? So if I want to just go ahead and make this relative units 1.0 over here, right? As you can see that relative units change to the same size, right? And then I was playing around. I made 20 point for absolute. Now that's awful big now, right? But the important thing here about the relative thing is it's going to be based on something else. It's going to be based on what is already defined on that page, okay, or within its within its scope, so to speak, right? And within its scope, it's defined in that body as, what was it, 16 points, right? 16 pixels, right? So 16 pixels. And so here, it's going to be 16 pixels. So if we put a 5 here, right, it's going to be 16 plus 16 plus 8 more, right? So it'd be 24. So now we're at 24. But we're at pixels and not points, right? It'd probably be better. We're using points. Need to be consistent here, right? So let's just change this to points. Oh, what happened there? Oh, yeah, well, that made that too big. So we don't really want to go that high. I'm sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. So let's go, let's just get that 12. And then that's 12 point. Let's just make this, 16 point. So here you can see the absolute. We got that 16. Relative's going to be 1.5 of our 12, which would be, 12 plus 8, right? So that'd be 20. So that's close, a little bigger than absolute. We just make this that. Now we're going to be at 12 points. Now all of a sudden we're smaller. So if we can change this one back to 12, which is our absolute one, these should be the same size now, right? So this is just a different way to to define your font size. If you know if you want to set a page level font and then based on EMs change it to different, make it bigger or smaller based on using that. That's another way to do that. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and go back to the slides for a little bit. So we're going to talk about font families a little bit. So here's some different types of font families: Times New Roman, Arial, Courier New, right? And we have some other ones that are, kind of cursive, right? And, obviously they're kind of hard to look at and to read, some circumstances you might want to do something like this, but a lot of times, it's best to stick with something that's, easily readable, both for, accessibility reasons for people that have, you know, uh, certain disabilities where that makes a difference, and then just for general readability for everyone. Correct. So regarding font families, so the way a font family works, as far as how the browser handles this, right, is well a font family is used in a browser. In a browser, is based on the fonts available on the client machine, right? Um, Not really the browser itself, but the browser will select the first font in the font family list that is installed on that machine, or can be downloaded. There's some other ways that can also happen. I don't want to confuse things there though, but so basically, the browser is going to go to that list and it's going to try to go, oh, do I know what Arial is? Do I have that font family? Do I have that installed? If I have, use that. If not, then I go to Helvetia, right? And I say, do I have that one? If I do, then I use that. If not, this one usually is a very generic one that usually all machines have. So it'll use this one, right? So that's how that works, right? It starts the first one, it's going to use that one. If not, it goes to the second one, and then usually the third one is the default one. Okay. You don't have to have three in your list. You can have less, but that's just this is usually just common to see font families defined like that, right? And then also you just have to realize if you're using something that is more than one word, you need to make sure that you use quotations around it, right? Times New Roman, Courier New, right? Um, so yeah, we already kind of talked about five font size a little bit here, right? Points. This is points, 12 points. Or you can do, yeah, we really didn't look at percent. You do 150%, right? And that's 150% of the parent element, right? And then we looked at EMs already, right? So this is just saying if whatever you define up here is pretty much inherited by all of the descendants of the body tag. The body tag is, basically, right after that head tag, and so all your content is going to be under that body tag. Your footer, your main, your header. I guess your header's at the top, but under the body, you got your header, you got your main, you got your footer, and all tags within them as well, right? And so all of those tags will inherit from the body here, right? Now, if you overwrite this at a certain level, you can overwrite it at a certain level within your code, though, right? And so, like, here's an example of your P tag, which is your paragraph tag overwriting, you know, to different font family, right? Font weight, font variant, font line height. Yeah, we'll go back in the editor and look at these a little bit more. So there's different font styles: italic, normal, right? Um, Different weights: bold, lighter, normal, bold. You can also give numbers. Bold, same as 700%. Normal's 400, not percent, but the number 400, right? Then you got line heights. So, you know, your letters can be changed with setting a line height property, right? We'll take a look at that a little bit here in the editor. Let's see, text decoration. We kind of actually looked at text line, didn't we? Well, remember we had the little copyright thing at the bottom of the page and moved that over to the left. So we'll go ahead and we'll take a look at the text shadows also. Text shadow. Um, Floating an image. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. All right, I don't want to sit there and spend all our time flipping through these. When we go into the editor and take a look. All right, let's go take a look at the editor. So here's some text styling. We're starting out with bold here. So here, yeah, actually, first thing I want to do here. So here, as you know, having that dot first is means it's a class, right? Part of it's going to be it's defined as a class for CSS purposes, right? So you've got this, and then so you got two back to back here, right? So if you go into the HTML, what you'll notice here is you've got a P tag, right? And this P tag has children, right? These are children, right? Here's the end of the P tag. So this is the parent, and these are children tags, child tags of the parent, right? So the parent has text styling, but the children have these different classes here, right? So that is why we write it this way. Okay. So over here you've got bold. You see the bold. We can make this like 400, and so that's going to be a lot lighter. I'm hit Control S to save it. Yeah, you can even have because that's normal. Yeah, right. So 400 is normal. Let's do 600. There we go. So there's our bold, right? Then we got italic. And that's over here. We see that. Next one's uppercase, right? And this one is a text transform, okay? These other ones, well, this one was font weight. Yeah, I guess I really didn't touch on that. This one's a font weight as bold. This is a font style, different kinds of styles, right? Italic is a style, right? So you got font style being italic. Here's a text transform, and this is text transform to uppercase, right? And then the underline is considered a decoration, right? Whereas, makes sense that the uppercase would be a transform because you're taking one thing and transforming it into another. Whereas the underline, you're just adding something to it, right? So you're just adding a decoration, which is the underline, right? And then here's our height one. And this has got a line height of 2.0. And that is on this height right here, right? And so up here you can see this would be a normal line height, right? That would be a normal line height. We made it 2.0. So it's quite a bit more, right? if I, go back, change this to 1, hit Control S, we'll see that it's now the same size as the other ones, right? So I made it even bigger. That's 3. So significantly more, right? So this here is a text shadow. And the way this works, the syntax of the text shadow consists of 4 values that define the appearance of the shadow. So the first one is going to be the horizontal offset. The second one is the vertical offset. And then the third one is the blur radius. And then you've got your shadow color, right? So that first one is let's do it like that. I don't like how that marks that, but all right. Not too much I can do about that. So, the horizontal offset. So this value specifies the horizontal distance of the shadow from the text. A positive value moves the shadow to the right, while a negative value moves it to the left. So here we got 2 pixels. Let's make that. Let's make it a lot more, maybe. So we can really see it. So yeah, I think you could see that. Let's put that back the way it was. Sometimes it's hard to tell unless you're really watching at the right time. Yeah. So obviously, yeah, you can tell that. I'm going to change that -4. You can see where that T is on the shadow here. See how that changes that. So there's that. Okay, just put that back the way it was. And then the vertical, this value, which is the second one there, specifies the vertical distance of the shadow from the text, right? A positive value moves the shadow downward. A negative value moves it upward, right? So if we do a -4 here, let's see what we got there. And there you see how it moved that up, right? Move that to +4 and move it way down below it. Yeah, okay. Put that back 2 again. And then we've got the blur radius, which is the third one here. And this value defines the blur radius of the shadow. It's the higher the value, the more blurred the shadow will appear. If the value is 0, the shadow will be sharp and have no blur, okay? And so we have a 4 here, so that means it's going to be blurred by 4 pixels. So let's just change this to 0. Take a look at it. Yeah, you can tell the difference there quite a bit, can't you? So what do we want to do on that one? So let's do a lot more and take a look at that. Yeah. Okay. So that's kind of how that works. Let's put that back like it was, I guess. I like that one there a lot. So, okay, the next one is we're going to go ahead and look at images and floating, okay? Here on the right-hand side, we have an image, and we also have some text to the right of it, okay? So over in our editor, we'll go look at the HTML. So we have this div, and this div, it's just like a little container, right? And this div contains the image and a P tag, which is a paragraph, right? And so there's our image and there's our text, right? As you can see on the div tag, you have a class called image float, right? and that is the only one that has a class associated with it, right? So let's go ahead and take a quick look at our CSS. And in our CSS, you can see we have this dot image float, right? So this dot image float, and we remember that that dot refers to it being a class. So this is the correct style for that div tag, right? But besides that, we also have this dot image float image. So this is basically saying for the HTML element that has a class of image float, for all images within that div, and that happens to be a div tag, float the image to the left, okay? And we have a margin here too, and we'll talk more about margins in the next chapter, in chapter 5. There'll be a significant amount of time discussing margins, okay? But for right now, we've got this image float, and we've got this image float for the image, correct? So when we say float left here, if we change this to right, let's see how that changes on the page, right? And we hit Control S, and you're going to see how that changes over there. So in this case, our image floated to the right-hand side instead of the left-hand side, right? So for now, we'll just go and put that back to the left. There we go. Now this overflow is based on that little div tag, right? So that little div tag container, so to speak, has an overflow auto. And what that means is if the contents that are in that div tag, and in this case it's the image and also the text there, if those two things end up being greater than what the size of that div tag is, okay, then overflow auto is going to actually put a scroll bar, okay? Now, in our case, we didn't constrain the size of that div tag, so it's just going to grow depending on what other content's in there, right? So just real quick here, let me show you this. So this was auto, obviously no scroll bar because, like I said, that div tag doesn't have any constraints to force it to put a scroll bar in there, right? But there is that option here to do a scroll, okay? And if we do a scroll, and even though we didn't constrain it by default, now when I hit Control S, notice what happens on the right hand side. It's going to put the scroll bar in here. But since we still haven't confined, we haven't described, we haven't set any constraints on the size of that div, it's just going to grow. Even though I put a scroll bar here, the scroll bar is really, disabled. I mean, nothing's going to happen here, right? But if we go ahead and put a height in here, let's put a height of 200 pixels, okay? And if we put a width, okay, of 200 pixels, we're going to save that and see what happens on the right hand side here. As you can see, now that we constrain the size of that div tag, right, we have a scroll bar. And even our text, because of this constraint, it forced the text all the way to the bottom, okay? All right. And we go actually put this back. Now, we forced this to say, put that scroll bar in there. But even if this is auto, right? since it's that size, right? If I save this, you're going to have your scroll bar because since we have that constraint, it's going to automatically put a scroll bar in there. If we make it larger though, let's make this like 400 each, right? And we save that. Now our scroll bar is gone because the contents can fit within the constraints that we put on that, right? The height and width constraints, right? Okay, let's clean this up a little bit. Get rid of that. The next thing I want to do is discuss links a little bit because I know that there's a reference to links in one of the homework assignments. So here I want to kind of show you a little bit about links. So in this case, these were the kind of the references I was using for chapter 4. I had the color palettes where you've got the hex and the decimal and the name colors, right? And then I had that normalized style sheet, right? And then the other one was that little calculator, the converter to convert decimal to hexadecimal, etc., right? So I went ahead and put a target on each one of these. Well, actually on two of them. And what this does was when you put a target on a link on an AHREF tag, use this attribute target, right? And if you put the target of underscore blank, right, just like this will open in a new tab or window, okay? If you put just self underscore self, it will open up in the current window, okay? And then the last one here is the default where I didn't put a target at all, right? And basically this will just open up in itself, okay? Some years ago, some of the browsers work differently, so it was always a good idea to make sure that you had either blank or self so it knew where. And also there's a thing called frames, iframes. They're not used as much anymore, but there's things where you can have an iframe. It's kind of just like a little container within the browser, and you can actually bring something up within that container in the browser. Okay. We're not really going to get into that right now. So for our purposes, really, it's just blank and self. But I'll show that last one, the default. Okay. So I'm going to make the HTML bigger here, or the web page bigger. And so here we have these references. And this one here, the first one, right, was blank, right? If I click on this, as you can see, it opened up a new tab. All right. Let's close that. The second one was self. So here we are in this tab. When I hit this one, it'll just open in that same tab, right? And then the third one was the default one where we didn't have a target defined at all. If you click on this one, it will still open up in self, right? By default. Okay. The next thing I want to do is get into selectors, and we're going to use some different, we're going to use a different file here, a couple different files, so we can just concentrate on selectors. Advanced selectors, actually. Descendant selectors, child selectors, and sibling selectors are all considered relational selectors. And relational selectors allow you to select elements based on their relationship with other elements in the document tree. Okay? So the first one here we're going to look at, this is the descendant selector. And as you can see, this is blue, right? And if we go look at the HTML, we can see in here we've got a section called descendant with a class of descendant. We also have a div with a class of parent, right? And then we have the paragraph tag here. And this is the child of the parent, right? So in this case, what we're looking for in our CSS, and we're going to go to our CSS here in a second, but we're looking for a class of descendant, a class of a parent, and then we're looking for a p tag. Okay, so let's go take a look. So here's our descendant selector, and you can see we've got the dot descendant, the dot parent, and a p tag. And it's going to say make that color blue. Okay, easy enough, right? Now what that, just to take that another little step forward here, so if you have an additional p tag here as well, right? Let's call this number 2 here, right? Based on that CSS, it's going to style all p tags that are under that parent, right? So if I save this, as you can see, it also applied the blue color to the second child, right? Okay. The next one here is just an example of child parent, right? So here is the direct child of the parent, right? So parent, we're looking for a parent, a dot parent in our CSS with a p tag after that, right? And also we have this little nested paragraph. So we're going to go ahead and look and see how that's done as well, right? And we made our direct parent, our direct child, I'm sorry, which is this one, green, right? And then our nested paragraph is just default black color, right? So let's go look at that. So here, we're saying that the dot child of a parent, right? P tag. So what we're saying here is select only the direct children, P elements. So what we're saying here is select only the direct children P elements of a parent inside a child section. Okay? So regarding child selectors, we have the section called child, right? I don't know if I really like this kind of relationship. This is a little strange here, but that's okay. So we have this section class called child, all right? And we have a parent div tag, right? And then we have children underneath that, right? This is a child tag, right? And then this is considered a nested, this is a nested paragraph, right? So we're going to go look in our CSS, we want to go look for our dot child, a dot parent, and our p tag, right? And we just want the direct child, right? So we go here. So we go ahead and use this like this, right? And what this says basically is select only the direct children. Let me move this out of the way. Select all P, select oh, I'm sorry, select only the direct children P elements of the parent inside a child section. So we have the child section, okay, and then we have a parent with the P tag, right? And we just want to select only the direct children P elements of the parent, okay? Got a little carried away there. All right. Let's go back here and here, well, then we had that nested one, right? And that's an individual div tag. A div tag with a paragraph tag, right? And so we go back here. So this next example is a child selector, okay? And what we have is we have the section called child, right? And then we have this parent, this div tag, which is a parent, right? And we have a p tag. And this p tag is the direct child paragraph, right? So what we're going to be looking for in our CSS is we're going to be looking for a child, we're going to be looking for a parent, and we're going to look for some kind of a sign that's going to say that we want just the P elements that are descendants. We want to select only the direct children P elements of the parent inside the child section, right? So this next example here is a child selector. And we have a section here with a class of child, right? Then we have this div container, right? This little div container that contains a paragraph. So this is a child of this parent here, right? And then we have another div tag with another p tag, right? But this p tag is just this is the direct child, right? And for child selectors like this, so what we're looking for when we get to our CSS is we're looking for a child, a parent, and we're looking for a sign. Man, I'm just messing this up awfully. So this child selector example, we have a section here, right? Class child. And we have a div tag with a class parent. And then as you can see over on the right-hand side and on the web page, you can see this is a direct child paragraph and it's colored green, right? So what we're going to be looking for in the CSS, we're going to be looking for a dot child, then a dot parent, and then we have to have a symbol there that is going to designate that we're just wanting the direct children of that parent, right? direct children P elements of the parent. Okay, so let's go take a look. So in this example here, dot child, that was the section, right? The dot parent class was that div tag. And then here is what we're saying is give me all of the P tags, right, of that parent that's a direct, that is a direct child, right? And in this case, actually, there's only one, right? That's this one. Since this is nested like this, it's not going to find that. If you would put another P under here, right? Another P tag here, and we'll do that and save it. As you can see, it finds that one, right? Because they're direct descendants of the parent, right? Here it's nested, so that's not a direct descendant, right? So let's clean that up a little bit. The next one is sibling, right? So as you see, we've got on the right-hand side on the HTML page here, on the web page, you know, we got the siblings. Sorry about that. Got a little carried away there. We have first sibling, second sibling, third sibling, right? So we're going to go look in our CSS, and we're going to be going to look for the class sibling, right? And then we're going to go from there, right? Let's go take a look. So in here, we've got a dot sibling. And we're saying first plus second. Let's make it a little easier here to see. I made this into a split window so we can look at both the HTML and the CSS at the same time. So what this is saying, this here, saying look for an element with the class second that immediately follows an element with the class first, where both elements are within a parent element that has the class sibling. So I know that's kind of hard, and you know it's going to take some time to play with this and get used to it. You know, this not automatic. You know, first time looking at it, understanding it. So, you know, it'll take some work, but you know you'll get there. You'll get there on this. For this one, okay, for this part here of the selector, right? We are saying we're looking for an element with the class second that is inside an element with the class sibling, right? And then this part of the selector, right? This part of the selector, the tilde there, right? This is called a tilde sign, right? This little tilde sign, right? So this tilde sign is generally sibling combinator, right? It selects all siblings that follow the previous element, right? So third specifies that we are selecting elements with the class third that are general siblings of the element with the class second. I know this can be kind of confusing, and like I said, it's going to take a while to play around with it and get to learn it, right? So what this one here is saying is select the dot second element that immediately follows a dot first element, both inside a dot sibling element. Okay? This one here, what this one here does, it selects all dot third elements that are siblings of and follow a dot second element, both inside a dot sibling element. I know these selectors can be confusing and hard, and with practice you'll understand them a lot better as time goes on, right? Okay, the next selector we're going to look at is belongs to the group combination selectors, right? And so here we're looking at this. We're going to look for in our CSF. We're going to be looking for this group universal, right? That's the class of the section, and then we have a div with a class group, and we have two p tags with the class group item, and then we have a paragraph with the class universal. Okay, let's make this bigger so we can take a look at that. Well, real quick, so as we notice, look at the colors here. We're expecting those colors for group item one, and group item two, and different color here for the universal selector item, right? Let's move this like this. So here, we've got group item, right? So this selector, this is a descendant selector that selects elements with a class group item that are descendants of the element with the class group. Okay? This means that any group item element that is nested inside a dot group element will be selected, right? I think we already know that, right? And it's going to change the color to orange, right? Now, as far as this universal, so let's explain. This is this here, universal selector, which we've seen this before, right? And it selects all elements in the document that applies the specified styles to them, right? In this case, it sets the margin bottom of all elements to one REM, right? It's next here. So here we're basically saying, and this is a class selector, simple little class selector. It selects elements with the class universal and sets their text color to brown, right? Okay, so as far as attribute selectors, right? So here we got the section attribute here, right? So we're going to look at that, okay? And we've got the class name attribute. And besides that, everything else is just the tags themselves, right? So in this case, yeah. So in this case, we're actually looking for an href, right? An href attribute, right? An href attribute that contains a substring example, right? And in this case, our URL contains example. And in that case, we're going to turn that teal color, right? And then this is another attribute selector here, and we're looking for the input type of text, right? And when we find an input type of text, we're going to go ahead and use a border like this, and and put some padding in there, right? So let's just look at let's look at the web page for that here real quick. So here's our link, right? It's teal. Probably hard for you to see it's teal, but color of that external link here is teal. And then here's the little box for the text, right? Next thing we'll look at is pseudo classes and pseudo elements, right? Let's make this bigger. So here we've got class pseudo, and we got a first item, a second item, a third item, right? And then down here, this paragraph has pseudo elements, right? This is and this class is before after. So let's go look at the style sheet here. And so here's our pseudo elements, and we do the dot before after, right? So these double colons and the word before here. So this is a pseudo element. It creates a pseudo element that is the first child of the selected element. It is used to insert content before the actual content of the element, right? So you can actually add content. So in this case, right, we added this content by using the selector. We actually added content to our paragraph. Okay, we'll go take a look at that. Right, we'll go back and look at the page here in a minute, and then the next one there, right, is the after there, right, and this pseudo element, it creates a, it's going to go ahead and put the content after. So this is before the content, and this is after, right? So let's go take a look at our HTML, our web page. I don't know why I keep on calling it HTML. So actually the HTML is the code, right? This is the web page. So as you can see here, we actually put the before and after tags. Based on that CSS, it actually added content to our web page, right? I guess I kind of, I kind of missed the pseudo classes here. So we'll look at that. You got your little hovering, right? So this one's basically telling for this unordered list, find the first list item. Well, the list item, find the first child and set the color there, right? Here it's saying for this unordered list, find the list item, and when you hover it over it, make it red, right? So let's go look at the web page. Set it right that time. So obviously, the first one is the color here. Well, all of them, if you hover over them, they're going to turn red, right? So I know these take some time to get used to, and it's hard for me to explain them to as well. So I'm right there with you. So just these are something you practice at, you look at, and maybe want to find there's other resources available to kind of help you maybe understand it. So it's going to take some time, but you get there. Okay. So that's all I have for the chapter 4. Next, we'll go ahead and move on to chapter 5, which is CSS box model. All right. Thank you, and have a good day.